When a person disappears, there are standard lines of inquiry that police officers must follow. But what happens when these lines of inquiry lead nowhere? Within a matter of weeks, a missing person case can become cold, leading to some of the most bizarre mysteries that cannot be explained. Number 5. 19-year-old Christy Lynn Booth was described by her older sister, Kathy, as a wild child. Born December 29, 1960, Christy's defiant streak was apparent from a young age. She lived with her parents and 2 siblings in Midland, Texas, and attended Lee High School, where teachers described her as a bright student. Christy had a keen interest in art, and during her senior year, she was involved with the art club. In 1979, Christy graduated and officially entered the real world. She was unsure of the direction of her life and wanted to live life to the fullest while she had the chance. To support her social life, Christy picked up a job as a waitress at the Great Gatsby in downtown Midland. While her primary residence was on Monty Avenue, with her parents and siblings, it wasn't uncommon for Christy to stay with her grandmother or friends. While the relationship with her parents was not frayed, Christy didn't agree with the rules they had set out. She enjoyed partying and coming home in the early morning hours, something which her parents disapproved of. According to Kathy, Christy was incredibly headstrong and only did what she wanted to do. Christy's straightforward and outgoing nature garnered her a close group of friends, and together they would hit the town. The evening of February 2nd, 1980 was no different for Christy and her friends. The group did not let the below-zero weather get in their way of a good time, and they headed to the Dimensions nightclub in the 400 block of Air Park Road. Christy's friend, Ron Fahrenberg, had offered to drop Christy off at the nightclub that evening under one condition. He wanted to borrow her beloved white and maroon AMC Pacer. Christy and Ron had been friends for several years, and she trusted him to care for the car. That evening, Ron drove Christy to the nightclub, marking one of the last times she was ever seen alive. At around 11 p.m., Ron Fahrenberg cruised down Air Park Road, pulling up outside the now demolished Dimensions nightclub. He scanned the sea of faces looking for Christy, but she was nowhere to be found. Ron exited the car and headed to the nightclub looking for his friend. In Ron's statement, he told officers when he entered the nightclub that he saw Christy's friends, but there was no sign of her. The group quickly discovered Christy had left her shoes, coat, and handbag behind. With temperatures outside below freezing, Ron knew Christy would have not left the club without her shoes or coat. In his statement to Midland officers, Ron allegedly drove around Midland all night looking for Christy. That was until her 1977 AMC Pacer ran out of gas on Highway 349, close to Interstate 20. After that, Ron ditched the car and headed back home. On February 4th, 1980, Christy's parents received a call from the Midland Police Department, as her car had been found abandoned along Highway 349. When questioned, Ron changed his story, telling officers that he had ditched the car as it encountered a mechanical failure. However, when a mechanic was called to the scene, the car was found to be fully operational. Christy had taken her car to Murphy's service station on the morning that she disappeared, and the car was given a full bill of health. This trip served as a vital clue for investigators. On the Murphy's service station receipt, they noted the mileage. When investigators examined the car, they discovered 268 unaccounted miles. Ron Fahrenberg was unable to give any reasonable explanation for this discrepancy. 3 days after Christy's car was found abandoned on Highway 349, she was officially reported missing to the Midland Police Department. According to Christy's sister, Kathy, Christy left home on February 2nd, 1980, saying she was going to work. She didn't come by on Sunday, and she stayed with friends, then stayed with their grandmother, and she was all over the place, and nobody really knew that there was anything wrong. Ron Fahrenberg immediately became the prime suspect in Christy's disappearance. The two had been friends for several years, and there was no mention in contemporary news reports that the two had ever been anything more than friends. Ron was given a polygraph test, which he passed with flying colors. Ron would then pass away in October of 1981. After Christy was reported missing, witnesses came forward and told investigators they saw her dancing with a white, muscular man with a goatee and a mustache, shortly before she disappeared. This elusive mystery man has never been identified, and the validity of these eyewitness accounts remains unknown. Investigators and Christy's family do not believe she left the nightclub voluntarily. Temperatures were below freezing on the evening of February 2nd, 1980, but while Christy was described as enjoying going out barefoot, she would not have left without her shoes or coat in such weather. Foul play is suspected in Christy's case, and while her parents are no longer around, Kathy Booth continues to fight for justice in her sister's case. In 2018, a now deleted Reddit user made a bizarre post to the Unsolved Mysteries subreddit. In their post, they alleged that their mother had a friend named Jane, who confessed to taking Christy's life on the evening of February 2nd. Per their version of events, Jane approached Christy in the Dimensions nightclub and tried to flirt with her. Christy politely shut her down, telling her she wasn't into women, which made Jane incredibly angry. As Christy walked away, Jane allegedly hit Christy in the side of the head with a great enough force to cause her to pass away. In the comments, the user states that Jane either buried Christy's body close to the nightclub or dumped her in a field. Others from the general Midland area chimed in on the post, adding that there had been several rumors about Christy's disappearance since the early 80s. The validity of these claims made in the post has never been confirmed, and it remains speculation. The Midland Police Department and Texas Department of Safety offer a $6,000 reward for information leading to her remains. Anyone with information is asked to contact Lieutenant Ronnie Wilson of the Midland Police Department at 432-685-7108, quoting case number 44928. Number 2. 35-year-old Krista Rogers of Bardstown, Kentucky, lived a quiet and unassuming life. Krista lived in the small town, 60 miles from Lexington, with her boyfriend Brooks Houck and her 5 children. Brooks and Crystal shared a son together, while the other children were products of previous marriages or relationships. According to Crystal's family, she and Brooks lived a happy life, and things seemed to be going well for her. Crystal was described as a happy and outgoing young woman who would do anything to protect her children. In 2015, the July 4th weekend was quickly approaching, with Crystal making plans for the weekend. Unfortunately, these plans would go unfulfilled when Crystal vanished without a trace. On the morning of July 3rd, 2015, Crystal awoke as usual to what she believed to be an ordinary day. Before returning home, she visited Walmart to grab some last-minute items for the July 4th festivities. Crystal's ex-husband later testified that she dropped her 2 children off at his home and then spent the evening with Brooks on a date night, as per WHAS 11. Contemporary news articles report that Brooks and Crystal had a strained relationship, with Crystal often spending the night at her cousin's house. According to Brooks, on the evening of July 3rd, 2015, he went to bed around 11 p.m. after all the children had been put to sleep. As Brooks went to bed, he saw Crystal on the sofa playing games on her phone. When he awoke the following day, his girlfriend was nowhere to be seen. At first, Brooks was not alarmed, believing Crystal had spent the night at her cousin's. Over July 4th and 5th, her family made repeated attempts to contact her, but those went unanswered. On July 5th, 2015, 2 days after he had last seen Crystal, Brooks reported her missing to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office. As the missing person report came in, the Nelson County Sheriff's Office was alerted to an abandoned car. They were stunned when they arrived at the scene on Bluegrass Parkway near mile marker 14. There sat Crystal's maroon 5-door 2007 Chevy Impala. Upon examination, the Nelson County Sheriff's Office found Crystal's keys, phone, handbag, and other personal belongings inside. According to the Charlie Project, the car had a flat tire, was unlocked, and Crystal's phone battery was dead. Crystal was an avid phone user, and it's out of character for her to have left these items behind. Crystal's family were immediately suspicious of Brooks, who they said showed no emotion in the aftermath of Crystal's disappearance. They've also alleged that Brooks was not proactive in trying to find Crystal, and did not attend searches for her. Days after Crystal was reported missing, Brooks was interviewed by Detective John Snow of the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. During the interviews, Brooks revealed that the two had gotten into a disagreement about the children, but Brooks assured Detective Snow that it wasn't a full-blown argument. Footage of Brooks's interview is available online. For the most part, it's an unremarkable and routine police interview. That is, until Nick Houck, Brooks's brother, storms into the interview room. At the time of Crystal's disappearance, Nick was an officer with the Bardstown Police Department. Nick storms into the interview room as Detective Snow progresses with Brooks, telling his brother to leave. Brooks took the advice of his brother and terminated the interview. Following this bizarre outburst, Nick was fired from the Bardstown Police Department for interfering with the case. According to WHAS 11, on July 15, 2015, Nick was also brought in for questioning by the Bardstown Police Department. Days earlier, the Bardstown Police and the Nelson County Sheriff's Office had received a warrant to search the Houck family farm, where Crystal lived with Brooks. During his interview, Nick is standoffish and aloof, but then detectives dropped a bombshell. A forensic search of Nick's car revealed bodily fluids in the back that could not be explained. When asked how they had gotten there or who they might have belonged to, Nick couldn't answer. Nick was released without charge, and authorities continued their search of the family farm. In December of 2015, the case took a bizarre turn when Danny Singleton, an employee of Brooks, was arrested and charged with perjury. The prosecution alleged that Singleton had lied to a grand jury about his whereabouts on the day that Crystal went missing. Ultimately, Danny Singleton would serve less than a year in prison, and not much has come from these charges since. In 2016, another tragedy would befall the Rogers family when the patriarch of the family and Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard, was found deceased at his Ed Brent Lane home. According to contemporary news reports, Tommy was found with a single wound to his chest while hunting with his grandson. Tommy Ballard was a huge advocate for his daughter and regularly pushed the police to find her. To this day, Tommy's passing has never been solved, although there are whisperings that it may have been connected to Crystal's disappearance. The FBI considers Tommy Ballard's case unsolved, as is his daughter's case. In 2020, the FBI officially took over the case from the Bardstown Police Department, and the case has sat cold ever since. In 2021, the FBI embarked on several searches of the Houck family farm. In August of that year, FBI agents were seen zeroing in on a driveway that was built in 2015 after Crystal went missing. The driveway was also built by the construction company run by Brooks Houck. WDRB reported in August of 2021, quote, large construction equipment could be seen tearing up the driveway and hauling large piles of dirt and concrete slabs away from the search. Agents were also seen earlier in the week using sonar equipment. During this search, the FBI recovered several pieces of evidence, but as of 2023, they've never revealed what they found. Similarly, in October of 2021, the FBI conducted an additional 5-day search of the property and found critical items of interest again. The FBI is keeping any evidence that it has under wraps. As of writing this episode, the FBI is offering a $25,000 reward for information that leads to Crystal's remains. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective John Snow of the Nelson County Sheriff's Office at 502-348-1840, quoting case number N1507-158, or the FBI's Louisville office at 502-263-6000. Number 3. In 1984, Lydia Abrams met the love of her life, Clem Abrams, in Mountain Center, California. The two instantly hit it off, and the relationship moved quickly. Within a few years, the two were wed and gave birth to 2 children, Clinton and Crisara. The family lived an extremely comfortable life, owing to Clem's booming real estate development business. The 4 lived on a 116-acre ranch called the Bonita Vista Ranch in Mountain Center, where the family prospered. Lydia, known as Dia, had an affinity for animals and spent every waking moment tending to them. In 2018, Clem Abrams passed away at the age of 78, leaving 65-year-old Dia as a widower. Their 2 children had grown into adulthood, and there were rising disputes on how the estate should be managed. Ownership of the sprawling 116-acre ranch fell onto Dia, who welcomed this notion with open arms. There's some debate as to whether there were fierce court battles between Dia and her children, although we do know that they had been named as executors of their father's estate. A year after her husband of 34 years passed away, Dia had a new love in her life in the form of 73-year-old Keith Harper. According to Keith, the pair met on a dating website, Farmers Only, in 2016, and found that they were a good match. Keith also stated that within 60 days of knowing each other, he had moved into the ranch. After dating for several years, Keith finally popped the question in June of 2019, while the pair were hiking at the Butterfly Rock Formation. Dia, of course, said yes, and the two were excited to plan their wedding. To the outside world, Dia and Keith lived the perfect life. But something dark was brewing. Dia had filed a motion to receive $6.7 million from her late husband's estate. However, this was opposed by Clinton and Chrisara, her children and executors of their father's estate. There are varying reports as to whether the Abrams family were close or whether tensions were high. In the summer of 2020, Clinton began to notice his mother's strange behavior. In late May of 2020, Dia rewrote her trust documents and signed ownership of the Bona Vista Ranch to none other than her new fiancé. She also signed over parts of her estate to Keith Harper and another woman named Diana Fetter. Diana Fetter was also given power of attorney, which allows a person to act on behalf of the trustee if they no longer have the capacity to do so. Dia's children were incredibly hurt when they heard the trust had been rewritten and feared Keith Harper had something to do with it. All of these lawsuits and legal issues led up to the afternoon of June 6, 2020. That morning, Dia walked over to her neighbor's home to give them freshly baked cinnamon rolls. The exchange was caught on a Ring doorbell, providing us with the last footage of Dia before she mysteriously disappeared. According to Keith, he and Dia had lunch together on the ranch before Keith left at 2:30 p.m. to complete some chores. Keith later told the Riverside County Sheriff's Office that he spent the rest of the afternoon mowing the grass and completing other ranch-related tasks. At 7:30 p.m., Keith returned home to eat a meal with Dia, but she was nowhere to be found. Keith searched every inch of the Bonita Vista Ranch home, calling for his soon-to-be wife. Keith also called her mobile phone and was excited when he heard that familiar jingle emanating from the bedroom, but his joy was short-lived. When he reached the bedroom, he found it was empty, outside of Dia's phone, which was plugged in and charging. A search of the ranch home concluded Dia had left her truck, keys, handbag, and phone. It wasn't until June 7, 2020, that Dia Abrams was reported missing by Keith. Keith told Oxygen that he spent the night searching for Dia before calling the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. The sheriffs arrived at the scene and took a statement from Keith. Dia's children, Chrisara and Clinton, were informed of their mother's disappearance, which is when the cracks begin to show. As reported by Oxygen, Dia and Keith may not have been the happy couple that they portrayed. When questioned by the police and media, Dia's friends said that she never mentioned getting married to Keith. Just as investigators were beginning to wrap their heads around the complex legal matters and lives of Dia and Keith, the unthinkable happened. 2 days after his soon-to-be wife disappeared, Keith Harper left California in an apparent state of despair. He told friends of Dia that he had a meeting in New Mexico and left without giving Dia a second thought. Keith Harper's behavior was noted as bizarre, but without any evidence, investigators were unable to move forward with a conviction. A forensic analysis of the Bonita Vista Ranch produced several key pieces of evidence, including a bedsheet stained with the red liquid and 2 spent shell casings. Officers were able to track Harper down in New Mexico, with him telling them that the shell casings were from a coyote incident and that the stains belonged to him. Forensic investigators wouldn't be the only ones to uncover unsettling evidence either. Clinton Abrams told the media that in the days after his mother's disappearance, he visited the Bonita Vista Ranch and noticed one of the bedroom doors had been cracked and smashed, adding, quote, "The trim was all cracked and it was clearly kicked in from the outside." In June of 2023, Oxygen reported that Clinton had also discovered a handwritten note in his mother's bedroom. The letter's contents have never been released, but Clinton states it appears his mother was scared for her life. On the flip side, Keith Harper went on the defensive, claiming it was actually Clinton who was responsible for his mother's disappearance. Keith painted Clinton as an evil monster who concocted a plan to make his mother disappear in order to inherit her estate. Since Dia's disappearance, Clinton and Chrisara have petitioned the court to remove Keith and Diana Fetter from their mother's estate in exchange for a neutral third party. The investigation into Dia's disappearance is ongoing, and the more investigators dig into the case, the more confusing it becomes. Lydia Dia Abrams is described as a white female with blonde hair, blue eyes, 5'5" and 130 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Riverside County Sheriff's Department at 951-955-2400, quoting case number D201-590-018. Number 2. 22-year-old Kent University student Judy Martens was full of promise and hope. Judy was described by those who knew her best as lively, outgoing, and most of all, compassionate. Judy had transferred to Kent State after 2 years of study at Ohio University to be closer to her family. Like most young college students, Judy balanced her private life with her studies and social life, often compromising on sleep. In May of 1978, the lives of the Martens would change forever when Judy attended a party just blocks away from her college dorm, never to return. On July 15, 1955, Arthur and Dolores Martens welcomed their first child, Judy, into the world. In quick succession, Judy was given a baby brother and sister, and the three siblings held a close bond. Judy and her sister Nancy were incredibly close and maintained that bond throughout their time at Avon Lake High School. In 1973, Judy left her family behind and moved to Athens, Ohio to study at Ohio University. By 1975, Judy had changed her mind and transferred to Kent State University to be closer to her family again. At Kent State, Judy studied art and women's studies, and according to her sister Nancy, she hoped to become a therapist after graduating. Judy caught the eye of everyone at Kent State. Not only was she pretty, but she was intelligent and funny. She found it easy to make friends, and within weeks of transferring, she had created her own little circle. May 24, 1978 was like any other for Judy and the students at Kent State. She spent the day studying and finishing assignments before returning to a room in Engelman Hall. Judy was in a privileged position when it came to dorm rooms. She worked as a resident assistant, which afforded her her own room. Judy's friends were incredibly jealous and often visited her room to escape their roommates' chaos. That evening, Judy dressed in a red wig and a costume and headed to her friend's dorm room. The two girls prepared themselves for the evening with Judy's friend taking what would become the last photographs of her. The two headed to Dunbar Hall, where it was reported that a party was being hosted. After arriving at Dunbar Hall, the details of Judy's case become murky. Some witnesses state that they saw her leaving Engelman Hall at around 2:30 a.m., telling them that she was returning to her room. According to records, Engelman Hall is a mere 300 yards from Dunbar Hall, and the walk should have taken Judy all of 4 minutes. But Judy never made it back to her room. As she didn't have a roommate, it took Judy's friends over 24 hours to realize she was missing. The response by Kent University campus police was lackluster, as they took an additional 24 hours to notify Judy's parents that she had gone missing. In reflection of the times, the campus police told Judy's parents not to worry, as she would likely come back. Judy went missing Memorial Day weekend, and she planned to spend the weekend in New York with 2 friends. Judy's parents traveled to Kent University's Engelman Hall to search for their daughter. They knew she had not left voluntarily when they entered her dorm room. Judy had left behind her glasses, makeup, clothes, and money. According to the Charlie Project, only one handbag containing 1 credit card was unaccounted for, and the credit card in question had never been used. It took the campus police almost a week to take Judy's case seriously and refer it to the Kent State Police Department. Weeks after Judy disappeared, her family received a strange call from the Kent State Police, who told them that they had new leads. According to officers, they'd received information that Judy moved to Mexico to start a new life. Witnesses recalled seeing Judy at a garage sale and overheard her telling people she was going to hitchhike to Mexico. The validity of these sightings has never been confirmed. Several searches were eventually organized, but nothing ever came of these. It wasn't until 2 years later in 1980 that another bizarre tip would come in. In 1980, the Kent State Police received a call from the county jail about a Judy Martens, who had been arrested for working on the street. Judy Martens had given Judy Martens' date of birth while she was being processed, and she would go on to make some bizarre comments. Judy's parents immediately attended the jail and believed the woman was their daughter. Unfortunately, fingerprint comparisons could not be conducted, as Judy Martens' fingerprints were not on the record. When the Martens came face to face with Judy Martens, she uttered, "Judy Martens is better off deceased." According to the Record Courier, the jail determined the woman was not Judy Martens based on dental records. Judy's ex-boyfriend, who she'd ended a 5-year relationship with, was interviewed at length and subjected to a polygraph. He passed the polygraph, although some still theorize he was involved in Judy's disappearance. Another theory is that Judy ran away to start a new life, a theory her siblings don't believe. Judy has missed many important family events, which is out of character for the kind, family-oriented young woman. William John Posey Jr. has also been considered a suspect in Judy's disappearance. In 1980, Posey confessed to kidnapping and taking a woman's life in Illinois around the time that Judy disappeared. In 2008, he also confessed to kidnapping and taking the life of 27-year-old Iris Brown, who disappeared from her Burlington, Vermont home on March 15, 1976. According to Posey Jr., he picked Iris up under the pretense he would drive her to Connecticut. Iris was traveling to see her boyfriend, Martin Gold, and was known to hitchhike. During the drive, Posey Jr. alleges the two got into an argument, leading to him asphyxiating her and throwing her body over the guardrail along Interstate 89. Like Judy, Iris's body has never been found and is still classified as missing. Posey Jr. has never confirmed or denied his involvement in Judy's case. To this day, it remains unsolved. Judy Martens is described as a white female with black or brown hair, hazel eyes, 5'2" to 5'4" and 115 to 130 pounds. She had her wisdom teeth removed as an adult and wore glasses or contact lenses. She was last seen wearing a red curly wig, a brown and yellow plaid shirt, and a beige trench coat with blue denim pants, a brown belt, oversized sunglasses, and was carrying a large white leather handbag. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations at 855-224-6446, quoting case number 784567. Number 1. 23-year-old Matthew Pendergrast was just 2 weeks shy of becoming a college graduate in late 2000. Matthew was described as a friendly, intelligent young man who enjoyed fantasy stories and online gaming. Matthew had spent his early years in Atlanta, Georgia, where he graduated from high school. In a brave move in the late 1990s, Matthew left Atlanta and the state of Georgia behind, enrolling in Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. The future for Matthew was bright and promising, but one December morning would change the trajectory of his life forever. In the late 1990s, Matthew enrolled at Rhodes College, over 380 miles from his childhood home in Atlanta, Georgia, choosing to major in Spanish. His lecturers described him as a gifted student, and Matthew was beginning to plan his career. In 2000, Matthew excitedly counted down the days until his graduation, and by December, the dream of throwing his cap into the air was about to become a reality. December 1st of 2000 started like any other day for Matthew. He awoke around 7 a.m. to prepare for the day. By 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m., Matthew had left the apartment that he rented just 4 blocks from the building where his classes were held. The woman Matthew rented the apartment from later told investigators she heard him moving around that morning and leaving between 7:30 and 8 a.m. Matthew's first Spanish class started at 9 a.m., but Matthew never arrived. Sometime between leaving his home and disappearing, Matthew called his friend in Atlanta, Georgia, and left him a voicemail. The content of this voicemail has never been released. Matthew's professors marked him as absent from the day's classes, which struck them as odd. His classmates believed he'd come down with an illness and may be back the following week. Hours later at 2 p.m., Mary Ellen Pendergrast, Matthew's mother, received a call from a hunter in Lonoke County, Arkansas. The hunter explained that Matthew's Toyota 4Runner had been found abandoned off of Kerr Road in Lonoke County, 120 miles from Memphis. The hunters had been passing the road when they saw the keys to the car were still in the ignition. They looked around for the owner of the car, but nobody emerged. Thankfully, there was an oil change receipt in the car, which contained the home number of the Pendergrasts. Mary Ellen's heart sank when the hunter informed her that her son's car was abandoned in Arkansas. As far as she was concerned, Matthew was attending class in Tennessee. Shortly after the call disconnected, Mary Ellen picked up the phone and called the Lonoke County Sheriff's Department to report her son missing. The search for Matthew Pendergrast began, but it wouldn't be until December 2nd, 2000, that the Lonoke County Sheriff's Office got their first clue. 100 yards from where Matthew's car had been abandoned lay a neat pile of his clothes, complete with his wallet, $46, credit cards, photos, and driver's license. According to the Memphis Magazine, there are differing accounts as to whether his socks and shoes were wet or dry, with one report saying, quote, "But all accounts describe his pants as wet from the knees down, looking as if the wearer stepped out of them and let them drop where they fell. His t-shirt," one investigator was heard to say, "could have come right out of the dryer." Matthew's mother, Mary Ellen, instantly knew something was wrong with her son's clothes when they were found in a neat pile. Matthew was not known to be the most neat person in the world, like many other young men his age. Neatness and order were not among his top priorities, and Mary Ellen knew from that point on that her son had likely met with foul play. After several days, the search for Matthew in the Arkansas wilderness wound down, and his car was taken to the Arkansas State Crime Lab for analysis. During this analysis, forensic technicians came across Matthew's journal, which held what may be another vital clue. In one of his final entries, close to December 1st, 2000, Matthew referenced the Silver Elves. After searching online, detectives found a website called the Elven Tree of Life and Death, which detailed how silver elves obtained immortality by walking into the water and becoming one with nature. Mary Ellen knew of Matthew's interest in poetry and fantasy, and rejected the idea that her son may have walked into the water to become a silver elf. Despite the sheer amount of clues, investigators quickly found themselves at a dead end. There were fears Matthew had been kidnapped for ransom, but no calls or demands had been made. Desperate, the Lonoke County Sheriff's Office turned to a psychic who claimed to have had a vision of Matthew taking off his clothes and walking into the bayou in an attempt to become a silver elf. Matthew's parents vehemently denied these claims and still believe their son met with foul play. By 2001, almost a year after their son disappeared, the Pendergrasts hired a private investigator as they were frustrated by the lack of movement in the case. The private investigator, who only identified himself as Roy, told the Memphis Magazine he believed the crime scene had been staged, although he could not say with any certainty who by. There are a handful of theories in Matthew's case, but none lead to any solid conclusions. Almost 23 years later, Matthew's family continues to fight for justice and answers. Matthew Pendergrast is described as a white male with brown hair, blue eyes, 5'6" and 110 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Lonoke County Sheriff's Office at 501-676-3000, quoting case number 007508, or the Arkansas State Police at 800-553-3820, or the FBI at 800-634-4097. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.